The first time they saw him, he was standing alone in the middle of the fog-shrouded field, barely visible through the drifting smoke of the morning barrage. The sun hadn't risen yet, only a pale, cold glow touched the mud. Artillery boomed far off, lighting the sky like distant, angry stars. And there he stood, unmoving, head bowed, uniform torn nearly to ribbons. A single British private raised his rifle. "Sir, there's someone out there." Captain Harrington, exhausted from 48 hours without sleep, stepped up to the parapet and squinted into the grey haze. At first, he thought the figure was a corpse upright on some snag of wire. Plenty of bodies ended up that way, held up by metal and mud like grotesque scarecrows. But then the figure moved. Just an inch. Barely enough. Just enough to reveal he was alive. And then Harrington realized something else. He was alone. No other bodies. No crater around him. No rifle, no pack, no helmet. Just standing there. As if waiting. "Christ," Corporal Bell whispered, "he looks like a ghost." But the man was no ghost, he was real as the frost clinging to the sandbags. And up close, he looked worse than any man Harrington had ever seen walk out of no man's land alive. When the patrol dragged him inside the trench, he didn't resist. He didn't speak. He didn't even blink. His lips were split and bloody, his face grey from cold and shock, his hands trembling uncontrollably. Harrington knelt in front of him, lowering his voice. "Soldier, can you hear me? What's your name?" "Nothing." The man stared past him, eyes hollow, unfocused, as if looking at something behind the world. "Where's your unit? Were you separated? Are there more survivors?" Still nothing. The trembling in his hands worsened. Mud dripped from him in clumps. His uniform, although torn, was German. But sewn beneath the collar was a British field dressing tag, smeared in dried blood. A German uniform. A British tag. And a man who didn't speak. Harrington glanced at Bell. "Get the medic." But when the medic leaned toward him to inspect his wounds, the silent man flinched violently, not away from the medic, but toward him, clutching at the sleeve of his coat with surprising strength. His lips moved. For a moment, Harrington thought he might finally speak. But no sound came out. Just a faint, ragged breath. And then the man pulled something from inside his coat, a folded, dirt-smeared scrap of paper, and placed it gently, deliberately, into Harrington's hand. The handwriting was nearly destroyed by mud and blood, but 3 words were still visible. "Don't let them." The rest was gone. Torn away. Harrington looked back at the man. His hands had gone still. His eyes fixed on Harrington with sudden intensity, a silent plea, desperate and burning. And then he collapsed. Not from pain. Not from exhaustion. But as though the weight of what he couldn't say had finally crushed him. And in the cold, muddy trench, as stretcher-bearers rushed forward and signalers scrambled to find out where he'd come from, Harrington felt a sinking realization. Whatever happened out there, whatever silenced him, it wasn't over. And whoever they were, they might be coming next. The man stood there at the tree line, motionless. The wind pushed through the battered pines behind him, but he did not sway. He simply watched the unit as if he had been waiting for them. Corporal Hale tightened his grip on his rifle. He wasn't scared, he'd seen enough darkness in Europe to be numb to most things, but something about this figure cut through that numbness like a blade. His uniform was wrong. It resembled the coat issued to French infantry early in the war, but the color was faded beyond recognition. Mud, smoke, and time had worn it down until it looked almost grey. The buttons were rusted. The fabric seemed brittle. And his face? His face looked like someone who had walked through a lifetime of trenches without ever stopping to sleep. "So?" Private Lennox whispered. What do we do?" Lieutenant Barrett raised a hand. "Let me speak to him." "Nobody fires unless I give the order." Barrett took one cautious step forward. "Soldier, identify yourself." The man didn't react. His eyes flicked toward Barrett, unfocused, almost searching. Then he blinked for the first time. Slowly. Deliberately. Barrett tried again. "Are you wounded? Do you need medical assistance?" The man's lips parted. But what came out was not an answer. It was a question. "How many of you are left?" His voice was coarse, strained, as if his throat hadn't felt water in years. Barrett frowned. What do you mean? How many of who? The man inhaled shakily. The living. A shiver crawled through the ranks. Lennox whispered, Sir. I don't like this. Barrett kept his posture controlled, but inside, something primal twisted. He cleared his throat. Where is your company, soldier? The man's eyes drifted past Barrett, toward the forest behind them, toward the path they had just traveled. Gone, he murmured. All of them. I tried to lead them out. I walked and walked and walked. His voice cracked. But the forest doesn't end. Barrett exchanged glances with Hale. That's impossible, Barrett said. We crossed this forest in 3 hours. The man's head tilted slightly, like a bird hearing an unfamiliar sound. 3 hours. He mouthed the words as if tasting them. Then he stepped forward. Not fast. Not aggressive. Just one slow step. But the entire unit tensed, rifles rising in unison. The man stopped, hands raised. I'm not here to harm you, he said. I just need to know. You said the war ended. Barrett blinked. He hadn't said that. Ended, he repeated. Soldier, what year do you think it is? The man stared at him for a very long time. So long that even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Then finally. 1916. A hush fell over the clearing. It wasn't 1916. It wasn't even close. Barrett's throat tightened. Soldier, he said carefully, it is 1919. The man's eyes widened, not with fear but with relief so profound it nearly made his knees buckle. I made it out, he whispered. I finally made it out. But then something changed. The relief drained from his face. His expression tightened into confusion. Then dread. Because behind the unit, back toward the forest, something moved. Hale spun around first. Contact left. But he never finished the sentence. Because what stepped out from the shadows wasn't an animal. It wasn't a soldier. It wasn't anything that belonged in a world lit by sunlight. It was a shape. A silhouette. A tall, gaunt figure limping forward with a gait that sounded like cracking wood. The unit backed up in formation. Barrett whispered, What is that? The man from the forest didn't look back. He didn't have to. His voice trembled. It followed me. The figure emerged from the tree line with a stiffness that didn't belong to anything alive. Every movement was wrong. Its shoulders rose too high. Its spine bent too far. Its limbs moved like they were remembering how joints were supposed to work. Private Lennox stumbled backward, rifle trembling. What is that thing? No one answered. Even Lieutenant Barrett, calm under artillery fire, composed while dragging wounded men through mud, felt his stomach knot. The trees behind the figure swayed for a moment, the branches shaking as if recoiling from whatever had stepped out. The man they found, the soldier stuck in 1916, kept his head bowed, breath trembling. It never stops following, he murmured. We tried to outrun it. We tried to hide. We tried. He swallowed, voice breaking. We tried everything. Barrett's voice dropped to a whisper, barely audible. What does it want? The man blinked slowly. It wants the ones who leave. The figure from the woods took another step. Its foot pressed into the softened ground, but no sound followed. Not a crunch. Not a snap. Nothing. No creature that size should move silently. Barrett lifted his hand in a sharp command. Form line. Bayonets fixed. Nobody fires unless I. The creature's head twitched in their direction. Not turned. Twitching. Like a photograph skipping frames. It took another step. And this time. A sound followed. Not a footstep. A whisper. Low. Breathless. Shifting through the clearing like wind dragging across a hollowed-out trench. Stay. Lennox nearly dropped his rifle. Sir, what is that? The soldier from 1916 finally raised his face. Tears streaked the dirt on his cheeks. We shouldn't have left, he whispered. We should have stayed in the forest. That's what it wants. Barrett snapped, why? Why stay? What keeps you there? The man exhaled shakily. It keeps the dead. The figure took 3 steps now, fast, sudden, its limbs jerking forward in unnatural bursts. Hale yelled, "Contact, spread!" Barrett shouted, "Hold fire!" But it was too late. Because the creature was no longer walking. It was standing in front of them. Impossible. One moment a dozen yards away. The next, face to face with Hale. It loomed over him, height distorted, shoulders expanding and contracting like it was made of fog trapped in human shape. Hale froze. For a moment, nobody breathed. The creature leaned forward, its head tilting until it hovered inches from Hale's face. Then, "Go back." The whisper echoed through their skulls, not their ears. Hale snapped out of it first, stumbling backward. "Fall back," he shouted. "Go." The unit recoiled, scrambling into formation. But the creature didn't move. It simply turned its head, staring at the man who claimed he'd escaped. The soldier's breath hitched. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no, please." He turned to run. But the forest behind him, the forest he had supposedly left, shifted. Branches curled inward, shadows stretching, the tree line bending as if the woods were inhaling. The man froze. There was nowhere to run. He fell to his knees. "I tried," he cried. "I tried so hard." The creature's voice slid through the clearing like a dying breath. "Come home." Barrett raised his rifle. "Hale, Lennox, on me. We're not letting that thing take him." But before they could move, the creature extended one elongated arm. The man from 1916 didn't scream. He simply went silent, frozen in a terror too deep for sound. A shadow wrapped around his body like a second skin. And he was pulled, dragged, absorbed, back toward the forest. Not fast. Slow. Inevitable. Like mud swallowing a corpse. His final words were barely audible. "Don't follow, don't ever follow." And then he was gone. Swallowed by the trees. The creature lingered at the tree line for one long, final second. Its head tilted again, broken, curious, aware. "Stay away." Then it stepped backward. And as soon as its foot crossed the line of pines, the forest swallowed it too. The clearing fell silent. Not a bird. Not a breeze. Nothing. Hale exhaled shakily. "Sir, what the hell just happened?" Barrett didn't answer. Because he didn't know. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever that forest was, whatever lived inside, it wasn't done with them. The march back to camp was silent. No one cracked a joke. No one muttered a complaint. Even the usual crunch of boots on dirt felt muffled, like the forest had reached past its boundary and was pressing invisible fingers against their ears. Lieutenant Barrett led the column, jaw tight, eyes flicking over his shoulder every few seconds. Hale whispered behind him, "Sir keeps checking if it's following." Lennox whispered back, "Wouldn't you?" The trees thinned as they approached the POW barracks, cold wooden structures surrounded by fencing, guard towers, and low lamps that flickered in the mist. Camp Barlow. Normally it buzzed with noise, shouts, footsteps, the clatter of mess gear. Tonight? Dead quiet. Barrett slowed. Something's wrong. A faint rumble of thunder echoed overhead. But it wasn't thunder. It was too rhythmic. Too steady. Too heavy. "Is that?" Hale began. Lennox answered for him. "Artillery." But the front lines were too far away for the shells to sound that loud. This was coming from behind the barracks. Barrett motioned with 2 fingers. "Stay tight. Weapons ready." They stalked through the rows of prisoner huts until the sound sharpened. Bang. 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 Metal slamming against something. Hard. Desperate. They rounded the corner. And saw the source. A German prisoner, wild-eyed, barefoot, shaking, was pounding on the locked infirmary door with blooded fists. "Off Macon! Off Macon! Open it! Open it!" A guard pointed his rifle at him. "Back away from the door!" The prisoner spun toward them the moment he heard footsteps. and immediately dropped to his knees when he saw Barrett's unit. He raised his hands in surrender, but his eyes weren't pleading for mercy. They were pleading for protection. He gasped, voice breaking, "Close the gates. Close all of them. It followed us here." Barrett stepped forward. "What followed you?" The prisoner shook his head violently. "I don't know what it is. But it lives in the trees. And it wants its men back." Lennox's throat tightened. "Sir, he's talking about the same thing." Before Barrett could respond, the prisoner pointed toward the northern fence, breath trembling. It was standing there. Watching. Just watching. When the lamps flickered, it moved. When they came back on, it wasn't there anymore. Barrett pressed, "Why were you in the infirmary?" The man's hand shook uncontrollably. "We dragged one of our wounded out of the forest today. He shouldn't have been alive. Not with those wounds." But he kept whispering things. Barrett froze. "What things?" The prisoner swallowed hard. That he didn't escape. That the trees let him go. That they wanted something in return. Hale exhaled slowly. "Sir, you don't think." But Barrett already knew. The soldier they found earlier. The one dragged back by the creature. The man who said he'd escaped the forest. He wasn't the first. Barrett's voice was low. "What happened to the wounded man?" The prisoner stared at him with hollow eyes. "He died. 2 hours ago." Barrett turned to the infirmary door. The guard spoke again, quieter this time. "Sir, that's not the worst part." Barrett tightened his grip on the door latch. "Then tell me what is." The guard swallowed. "When he died, he didn't stop whispering." Barrett froze. His blood went cold. "What?" The guard nodded slowly, terror creeping into his voice. "He's still whispering, Lieutenant." Barrett stepped back. "The dead man." "Yes, sir." Then, before anyone could move, a soft sound pressed through the infirmary door. Not a groan. Not a cry. A whisper. "Don't let it in." Hale stumbled back. Lennox swore under his breath. Barrett stared at the door like it had grown teeth. "We're opening it," he said. The guard's eyes widened. "Sir, you can't." "We're opening it." Barrett turned to his men. "Bayonets ready. Masks on. I don't know what we're walking into." They snapped into position, adrenaline sharp and cold. Barrett unlocked the door. The hinges groaned. And as the door cracked open, a wave of freezing air washed over them. Hale gagged. "What is that smell?" It wasn't rot. It wasn't disease. It smelled like pine needles. Wet earth. And something older. Something alive. Barrett pushed the door open fully. The room was dim, lanterns flickering weakly. A single cot sat in the center. On it lay the dead prisoner, chest still, face pale, lips parted. But his mouth was moving. Very slowly. And as the room filled with silence, the whispering grew clearer. "It knows you opened the door." Lennox choked. Sir, we need to close this." But the whispering continued. "It knows your names." The lanterns flickered. Went dark. Flared back on. The dead man's eyes were open. And looking right at Barrett. "It's already here." Barrett didn't move. No one did. The dead man's eyes, glassy, unfocused, impossibly awake, stared straight through him. Not at him. Through him. Like something behind those pupils was peering out from a deep tunnel and studying its next doorway. Hale whispered, voice cracking, "Lieutenant, please tell me this is some kind of reflex." But reflexes didn't make lips move. Didn't make breathless lungs force out words. Didn't freeze a room with a coldness that felt like it came from the soil of a grave. Barrett stepped closer, despite every instinct in his body screaming to run. "Identify yourself," he demanded. The corpse's jaw twitched. A faint whisper slid out. "He is not here." Barrett swallowed. "Who is speaking?" The lips parted again, the voice softer, harsher, layered with something that was not human breath. "You already met me." Lennox stumbled backward, boots scraping across the wooden floor. "No." No, sir, that's the thing from the woods. It has to be. The whisper continued, gaining rhythm, like it was learning how to use the mouth it had borrowed. The man you found was not lost, he was taken. Barrett felt his heart hammering against his ribs. And the others, he asked, his voice barely steady. The missing patrols? The German prisoners? What did you do to them? The whispering stopped. The dead man's lips pulled into something that wasn't quite a smile. Fed them. Hale nearly vomited. Lennox whispered, Sir, close the door. Close it now. But Barrett held up a hand. What do you want? Slow. Deliberate. Heavy enough to shake dust from the rafters. Lennox whispered, Sir, the forest didn't stay outside. Barrett raised his rifle. Everyone behind me. The hinges of the infirmary door groaned, loud, bending inward. Hale whispered. It followed us back. The wooden boards of the door began to crack. Splinters fell to the floor. A deep, wet exhale slid through the gaps in the wood, like something breathing through moss and gravel. Barrett braced himself. Whatever happens, he said quietly, don't run. Outside, a tall, distorted silhouette leaned into the lantern glow, branches where arms should be, bark where skin should be, eyes glowing like faint embers. It spoke in the dead man's voice. Trade, or harvest. The door exploded inward. The door blew inward with a roar of splintering wood. Hale dropped to the floor. Lennox screamed. Barrett raised his rifle and fired point blank into the thing standing in the doorway. The bullet sank into it, but didn't fall out. They disappeared, swallowed by bark and moss like seeds pressed into soil. The creature stepped forward. Its height was impossible, 7 feet, maybe 8, its limbs long and crooked like roots ripped straight from the earth. Its chest rose and fell with a slow, groaning breath that sounded like wind dragging through dead branches. Barrett shouted, fall back. To the rear hall, G.O. The men stumbled behind him as the creature entered the room. It didn't hurry. It didn't chase. It simply followed, each step shaking the floorboards. At the back of the infirmary, Barrett slammed the door behind them and slid the metal bar into place. It wouldn't hold long, but it bought seconds. Sir, Hale whispered, shaking. We can't kill that thing. Not trying to kill it, Barrett said, breathing hard. We're stalling. For what? Barrett looked back toward the hallway, toward the infirmary room where the dead man still lay. For him. Lennox stared. Sir, what do you mean? A thud hit the door behind them, deep, resonant. Another. The wood creaked. Splintered. Barrett didn't flinch. That thing wants a trade. Its creature. The one we dragged back. Hale gasped, realizing. You're going to give him back. Barrett nodded once. Open the way. Another blow slammed the door, the metal bar bending. The soldiers rushed into the room with the dead body. Except, the body was already sitting upright. Lennox froze, gasping. The corpse's head turned toward them slowly, joints cracking. The forest waits. Barrett swallowed hard. You, he said. Get up. The corpse obeyed, its movement stiff but precise. It stood beside Barrett like a puppet held by roots. Hale whispered, Sir, this isn't a man anymore. Barrett nodded grimly. I know. The door behind them shattered. The creature stepped through the wreckage, ducking under the splintered frame, its ember eyes locked on the corpse. Barrett pushed the dead man forward. You want him? Barrett growled. Take him. But leave us in peace. The creature paused. The room fell completely still. The forest thing leaned down, its bark-coated hand brushing the corpse's shoulder. Roots curled around the dead man's chest, gentle at first, then tightening. The corpse made no sound as it was lifted like a child being reclaimed by its parent. Ours, the forest being whispered. Barrett held his breath. The debt is closed. Then its ember eyes turned toward the soldiers. For now? The creature backed toward the shattered doorway, dragging the body with it. Another step. Another. And then it turned sideways and slithered out into the night. Outside, the wind rose, shrieking through the tree line like a warning whispered through leaves. The forest swallowed the shape. Swallowed the body. Swallowed the sound. And soon, even the wind died. Silence. Real silence. Lennox sank to the floor, shaking uncontrollably. Hale exhaled a breath he'd been holding for minutes. "Lieutenant, what now?" Barrett stared out the broken doorway at the black tree line. "We leave," he said quietly. "At first light. This camp is dead. And if we stay, we'll join it." Hale nodded silently. Lennox whispered, "Sir, do you think it'll come back?" Barrett's jaw tightened. "No." He looked at the tree line again. "But only because we gave it what it came for." The wind blew again, soft, harmless. The forest slept. For now.